to have someone I can trust and talk to as a Christian, as a Muslim imam, and talk about our similarities and our differences. I'm taking a different position. Again, my name's Ed Heilman. My position essentially is that religious texts don't actually matter that much. Everybody has religious texts that say, don't be a jerk, don't kill people, don't hurt people, don't lie, don't steal. But history is filled with being a jerk, lying, stealing, and all of that. So it isn't really a matter of that we don't have wonderful texts to operate from. It's just that people are filled with greed and fear and hatred and things like that. And so history is filled with warfare. But I want you to think that it's also filled with peace. And there's plenty of times where there's competition, and there's plenty of times where there's cooperation. So I think that it's wrong to blame religion for everything, like some radical atheists might. They say, boy, if we could just get rid of religion, we would live together in peace. I don't think that's true. But it's also not fair to excuse religion from everything, because sometimes leaders have also been religious leaders and have incited violence. Another thing to think about is that being careful to apply the same standards to ourselves that we apply to others is just clear thinking, and that means that we don't just highlight the errors of another faith without understanding some of the atrocities and difficulties that have occurred in our own. An example of that might be to say, oh, Syria today is a Muslim problem. There's Muslims killing Muslims. But was Rwanda then a Christian problem, where Christians were killing Christians in Rwanda? So you see what I'm saying? Everybody can start pointing around and say, you guys are jerks, but we're angels, and that's just not true. I'm going to go with the Apostle Paul and say everybody's got some jerk in them, and that is all of sin fallen short of the glory of God. There's troubles all around. Muslims have troubles, Christians have troubles, Hindus have troubles, Buddhists have troubles. If you don't think Buddhists have troubles, I just would like to remind you about World War II, China and Japan, where the Buddhist country invaded the Buddhist country. Another place where we often make bad comparisons is a colonized nation recovering from that with one that hasn't been colonized. That's like comparing Sweden to Syria. But if you look at a Christian colonized nation, you might look at Rwanda or the Central African Republic or Haiti. So again, you need to think in terms of many other ways of identifying what's a Muslim nation, what's a Christian nation, where are they in their history right now. That's another thing. If we look at where's a good place to live right now, it was different 500 years ago. And it may be different 500 years from now again. History's not done. So we all need to have some wisdom and humility and respect when we talk about violence and our religion and other religions. So, I have a book list for you. I figured you came to a library, maybe you're readers. And next time Shams and I get together and do this, we decided we're going to do a bibliography together. This has none of his books, all of mine, and there's 13 of them on there, and a little summary of what they might show you. But a book I would highly recommend that speaks on this subject, apart from Karen Armstrong's Field of Blood, which talks on this, is Rodney Stark's For the Glory of God. He talks about the Crusades and the witch burnings and the slaughter of Jews, not during the Holocaust, but during hundreds of years prior in Europe. And he shows a couple of things. One of them is whether it's Christians or Muslims or someone else, there seem to be certain common contexts that make difficulties. Where there is the most peace in the world is where it's most complex. And that's why the United States is such a great place to live. And that's because there's 500 different or so Christian denominations. So nobody can really beat up on anybody because there's just too many of them. And this is a place where there's such a variety of religions. The complexification adds to this. It diminishes that just one-way split, us and them, because there's so many thems and us's in so many different ways to divide the country into different groups. So complexification helps. Also, a lot of the worst atrocities were done when there was, I would call it mob rule. When the religious authorities got involved, they generally told people stop killing. So there's a couple of those. So that's one thing I want you to think about. If you want to see what the sociological roots that are in place when religious violence happens, this is a good book for you. Another more difficult book, because he doesn't spell it out really simply, is this book by Glover, Humanity, A Moral History of the 20th Century. And he, again, doesn't say that it's the religions. We all have good scriptures. So it's really not a matter of really that we need better scriptures. Our scriptures are fine. He says what happens is the barriers to violence get removed. Some of the barriers that happen are we get technological distance. So we can kill people by a press of a button. We can kill people by passing a law. We never see the people that die. We don't see the people living on the garbage heaps. We don't see the people that are starving to death or dying of curable diseases. We don't see the people. We have technological distance. Another thing that we have is the fragmentation of responsibility. And so nobody's at fault. I'm following orders and this one's only doing that part. And so with the fragmentation of responsibility, it can add to violence. There's always the problem of tribalism, us and them. And that can always be used by unscrupulous powers to divide and conquer. A lot of the violence that we can see in the post-colonial violence is still a carryover from the divide and rule aspects of occupation by the European powers earlier. So according to Glover, we need to, whereas dehumanization, we need to move to rehumanization. And so be aware where you might be being deceived. Look who benefits. And one of the things to do is embrace complex identities. So look at people not just as one identity. Look at them as 6 identities. So you could say, it's a man. It's an American citizen. He's a man. He's an American citizen. He's a Muslim. See, 3 identities, not just he's a Muslim. In my case, he's from Toledo like me. There's another identity. And we probably like a lot of the same foods, and we're deeply religious and care a lot about God. We have a lot in common. We have quite a few. But if we just went by one identity, it would be easy to go us and them. But if you remember that we are all very complex, there's multiple identities. That helps us with our rehumanization. Part of Karen Armstrong's point in her book is that we look for simple answers. You know, we want to find 3 reasons for violence and then stop them, and we make one of those religious, or maybe even the only one religious. But these things are very complex. But anything we can do to add nuance and complexity, rehumanization is the right direction. So that's that's Glover and Rodney Stark. Man, if you like to be judo flipped in your thinking, Rodney Stark's your man, because you read that and go, holy cow, you're kidding, Rodney, and he backs it up with figures. He's quite the guy. Okay, so one of the things to think about, creating alternative communities of peace takes work. So first of all, peace on earth is difficult. If it was easy, it'd be done already, right? It ain't done, and it even looks like it's not going to get done. So let's make it simpler. Okay, peace in our own communities. Well, it just turns out that's not very easy either. Whether it's a Christian church or a synagogue or a bowling club or something. When people get together, there's trouble. And as a part of the Multi-Faith Council of Northwest Ohio, I love to go and ask the rabbis and the imams and the sensei at the Buddhist temple about their fights. And I can tell you, Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, Hindus fight with each other. They get their feelings hurt. They feel like they're not heard and understood. They feel like they are not having their say, or one family thinks they're holy and mighty and better than another one, and so forth. This is true for humanity anywhere. So not only do we have a trouble with peace on earth, but even how to do things to make peace in our own communities. But it's easier to make peace in our own community than it is on earth. But it'd be a mistake to think that we should start with earth and then fix our community later. We should probably start with our communities and make a living example of a better way of living. We don't have a lot of what do I want to call it, credit if we can tell other people, you all should stop fighting and be at peace, like us, if it's not like us. So we have to find ways to live at peace within our own communities and in our own families. We have to have something to show, not just something to tell. And so part of the roots of that, even getting closer to the heart, it's going to sound trite and like a platitude maybe, but world peace starting with inner peace? Oh my. So I got a joke for you. So the joke is the guy goes to the hot dog vendor, and he's a Buddhist hot dog vendor. So he says, I'm going to tell a joke on this guy. So he goes, I'll take one of those vegan Buddhist hot dogs there. And he says, what would you like on it? He said, make me one with everything. So he gives him a 20. He gives him a 20. And the Buddhist gives him the hot dog. And the hot dog was only $2. So he waits for his change. And he waits, and the Buddhist doesn't do anything. And he goes, where's my change? And the Buddhist says, change comes from within. Okay, so world peace, peace in our own families and our own communities. Peace starts in some ways within the transformation in our own hearts, having a way to increase in ourselves. Now in the Christian world where I'm from, I believe in the fundamental three temptations of Jesus, which were that he was tempted to security with the bread temptation. We can never be secure enough. We want to survive. He was tempted to esteem and affection and fame and fortune, if you will, in the temple, thrown from the temple temptation, and then finally power and control. People can never feel secure enough. They're addicted to safety and security, and they will kill. They will take somebody else's safety away to protect their own. I held a sign out at one of the street protests one time, "Stop killing for peace." But people will save themselves first. And why not? We love ourselves and our family and our children. But there's an addiction where a person can never, ever, ever be safe enough. They need to have 2 lawyers and instructions on everything, and everyone with them all the time. So that's one thing, safety. And the other one is esteem and affection. People can never get enough. So people have all this money and all this power, and what do they want? More. And everyone wants their country to be the greatest, and their everything to be the greatest, and them to be the greatest, and have the greatest clothes, and have the greatest dog, and have the greatest spouse, and so forth and so on. It's an addiction to this constant need for more affection and affirmation. And then there's the power and control. It's an addiction. Never can get enough power and control. And so learning to recognize these illnesses in ourselves and the compensations is part of the Christian path and our way to work at inner cleansing from the diseases that affect us as human beings, being able to give these things back to God. And that comes from a lengthy process of spending time with God. And that's in the book there on centering prayer. by Father Keating. All right, so I'm suggesting we start with ourselves, then we move into our intentional community, then we try to do stuff locally, and ultimately we work at things globally. So that makes sense to you? Because if we're a jerk and we're making trouble in our family, then we don't have a lot to say about Palestinians and Israelis or other places in the world if we can't even do some forgiving and living on our own. Okay, the next thing. Staunton Lynn wrote a book, From Here to There, not in the bibliography. He says that we're overwhelmed by how much there is to do, so what we need to do is accompany each other. We don't have to fix everything ourselves, but we certainly should support and get out of the way of other people that are trying to do a good thing. So just accompany one another. That's what we're doing tonight. We're accompanying each other in the work of peace. It's not all on me, it's not on you, we're working on this together. Another thing that Staunton Lynn talked about is solidary unionism or warrening, and that is all of this networking, essentially networking, finding people to work together with, to know, to help each other out. And then the last thing is from the Zapatista movement. You can't really expect that people will bring peace from above. It comes from below. People who are above very often worked very hard to get there, and if they could have their druthers, they would be even higher above than they are now. There's no end to the passion for more power, more prestige, more money, more. And yet the religious path of submission in Islam, of kenosis in Christianity, of moksha in Hinduism, is about letting go. So we know the way. And I'm grateful for you listening to me talking about it tonight. Enjoy your bibliography. Happy studies.
Now we're going to have a Q&A. If you want to ask a question, if you could please come up and ask it in the microphone. That way just so everyone can hear.
I want to say a couple of things first and then ask a question, if you don't mind. As I stated, we heard about this and I was really concerned because I don't know the Imam, and I was concerned that if he is speaking on my behalf, I wonder what kind of thinking he is. And then we heard from different wonderful people, Dr. Said Hassan and then Reverend Tim Berger, and they assured me that both of them are great, and that's why we came and we were all encouraged to come. Thank you so much. The other thing I want to state also that we started an interfaith group here, and we started last January. And first actually was in my house, and we had 60 people, and Imam Eid came and several people from the Toledo Mosque. And we had the interfaith prayer during the National Prayer Day, and it was at the Civic Center, and Imam Eid came again, and it was really wonderful. And definitely we're not going to let you go before we invite you to come to our groups and discussions, please. My question now for you, Pastor. We brag as Muslims that the Quran never changed. It's the same words always. With the Bible, there's different Bibles starting from the Old Testament.
Yes.
And it's different and it changes.
Yes.
What can you tell me about that?
Okay.
Thank you.
I would say that our scriptures are more akin to hadith in Islam. In hadith, there are things that the Prophet said that have been gathered together. And you can see in our New Testament, there's like 4 fundamentally different stories about how Jesus spoke, where he went, what he did. And they do not line up. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. In addition, we have all of the Hebrew scriptures and more. I would like to say to you as a Muslim, ask Imam if I'm right, Are not our scriptures your scriptures too?
Definitely.
Okay, so I don't think I need to say more, because you have to deal with it too.
Yes.
Very good answer.
Thank you.
So first of all, I want to thank you very much for coming to Lima. You know, we have a small community here, it's growing, and we need these kinds of gatherings as Sister Maha pointed out. And this is also work in progress. My question, Pastor, thanks for your wonderful talk and also to Imam. And my question is addressed to Imam Wahid. I mean, as Pastor said, the scriptures are wonderful and everyone knows that good things are to be done. And how can we, and you cited a very good example of Umar ibn Khattab not praying in the church, so that, and that's an example of tolerance and understanding about others. How, I mean, as a Muslim, I feel we are missing the point. You know, we have wonderful theory. How do we put it in practice? I have always wondered about it. I think maybe I don't want to really, the question is really addressed to you, but I think since you are one of the leaders, I think what we are lacking is this issue of tolerance taught from the very early childhood days. We are not doing that, and we are not doing a good job at it, from what I see.
Should I take the microphone?
Yes.
Okay, this is a very good question. It's a very important question, and the Quran gives a very practical answer. I mean, there are many answers. There are many angles or many styles by which we can answer this question. But the emphasis that I think is most important here is on education. You know, quite frankly, when there is ignorance, when ignorance is present, then tolerance will disappear. And the Quran says in the first verse that I mentioned, it mentions about the first thing it mentions is after Tawheed, that recognizing that God is one. It starts to go on and talk about knowledge. So basically, what I'm saying is education. So there has to be an education scheme. Education schemes locally. Well, first of all, personally, locally, then nationally, then globally. That doesn't mean that we agree on each and every single point, but at the very least, having an accurate representation of each other, of whatever issue or whatever subject that is under controversy. So education, I think, is the number one important way to plant the seeds for putting tolerance into practice. I read an article. It's a Case Western Reserve magazine article, and the article was talking about Hajj, about the pilgrimage that Muslims are to make once in their life to Makkah, and it has statistics. And among the statistics it was saying things like, so many number of pilgrims, that one of the things they gain from that is tolerance of the religions, or more likely to believe in the rights of women, and it had a whole laundry list of issues. And Hajj is a good example of education. You have to leave your comfort zone. The Muslim, this is part of the Muslim faith. You have to leave your comfort zone to go to a place in the middle of the desert where, if you believe there's a hell on earth, they will tell you there's a hell on earth. You have to leave your comfort zone And you're forced to encounter people who are not like you, people who don't think like you, people who don't have the same educational background or class background or financial background. You're forced to encounter them face to face and to basically learn not through books but through by experience. So all of this is to say that education or knowledge is the most practical way, I believe, to achieve tolerance.
So should there be a practical step towards it, a
Well,
curriculum or something?
I mean, unless we conquer the world, maybe we can't conquer the world, and I shouldn't use the word conquer, especially as being recorded.
And that's not good tonight. Unless you fill the world with unity.
You know, the Quran, one of the statements of the Quran, it says to have devotion to God as much as you can. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Meaning you do what you can. You're as an individual or as a small number of people, we're not expected to take all the burdens of the world upon our shoulders. I mean, this is impossible as it is. But we do what we can. We have gatherings like this. It didn't take much to organize a program of this kind. Or the program that the council, the things that you were mentioning earlier. We take practical steps. If we see that there is ignorance in our community, maybe we should teach our community instead of blaming people. Maybe we should make efforts to teach them ourselves. Maybe we should make efforts to get together. I read an article. I do a lot of reading now. I read an article about a Muslim who decided to go, I believe it was in Michigan, and he went to downtown, one of the cities in Michigan. He held a sign that says, "I'm a Muslim, ask me questions." And so he thought that only a few people would be interested. He put an ad in the newspaper, and so many people every day were coming to him asking questions, and but they found out. So it's just a small effort, but often small efforts produce great rewards.
Can I say one comment?
Yes.
I'm going to quote a book like you quoting, and this was, I'm sure you read it, The Real Bad Arabs.
I might hear it.
Real Bad Arabs. Have you read that book?
Real
Bad Arabs.
No, haven't.
Okay, and it's not real R-E-A-L, it's R-E-E-L.
Okay.
And he's a Christian, and I just forgot his name. I have that book at home.
Edward Said?
No, not Edward Said. But he was saying, real is the real of the movies.
Yes.
And he's talking about how Muslims were so passive for so many years and didn't do anything. And we are culprits. I've been in the States for 35 years. I used to go and talk to schools and church about Egypt, the pyramids, Egyptians. We walk like an Egyptian, all that stuff. And what took me to start talking about Islam was September 11. Mm-hmm. And having all what happened, all the ugly atrocities that happened in the name of my religion, I started. And I want to tell you, I'm not accepted by many Muslims because I'm not wearing hijab. I look like a regular American woman. So many people are not accepting that, but you can't imagine, thank God, in our little community, how I'm accepted and talk a lot to many of our churches and the temple. And honestly, this is one of the things that we need to continue to. We are passive, really definitely passive. What's happening, we should be talking all. I was always talking with Brother Tariq and say, I wish we get the New York Times and have names of all Muslims in the United States saying we don't approve of all that.
Thank you. Well, the media's pretty terrible. As soon as they stopped having movies about shooting Russians, they started showing movies about shooting brown-skinned, dark-haired people. You can see it. You have a question. Come on up.
I'd like to make a short statement.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Reiser, and I consider myself a humanist
Ah, yes.
and
Thank
agnostic
you.
humanist.
All right.
But what I would like to say is, of course, I've been separated from churches for a long time, but I know Pat, when she was a child, her religious education was just about Catholic. When I went to Sunday school, my religious education was just about Lutheranism. But I think if all the churches would have an inclusive Sunday school lesson, that might help bring us more together.
Thank you. I will say that we churches are a diverse bunch. So this a Muslim friend of mine, I shouldn't quote him without his permission, but he said to me, "Why can't we Muslims get along together like you Christians?" I said, "What?" It's because they were having a dispute in their mosque. And I said, "What? Look at the street corners. A church on this side of the street, a church on that side of the street. You think that's because we get along?" So we have the problem of thinking the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. It's not. There are wonderful saints from within every religion. And there's some pretty good atheist humanist saints too. And there's some real murderous bad examples from all. But here's the thing. I am a Christian and I am a pastor, and I'm taking my life very seriously. And so